step into a world of opulence and extravagance beyond your wildest dreams. From private zoos to gold-plated furniture, this is the inside story of a lifestyle few can imagine. Get ready to explore the lavish luxuries worth millions that could only belong to one of the biggest music icons in history. Hey there guys, welcome back to Luxury Buzz. Today, we're going to take a look inside the world of the king of pop himself, Michael Jackson, and the extravagant lifestyle he lived. But before we get started, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for some exciting videos. Michael Jackson was a successful singer, songwriter, and performer. From the Jackson 5 to his solo career, Michael Jackson has lit up stages around the world with his amazing vocals and dance moves. With hit songs like Thriller, Billie Jean, and Dangerous, Michael Jackson earned millions of dollars that he used to fund his extravagant lifestyle. And today, we're going to share with you some interesting facts about his net worth that you may not know. But do you know the net worth of Michael Jackson at the time of his death? You might be surprised to learn that at the time of his death, his net worth was actually negative $500 million. How did that happen? Well, in order to finance his lavish lifestyle, Michael took out a massive $380 million loan from Bank of America, using his 50% ownership stake in the music publishing company Sony ATV as collateral. That loan's interest alone was tens of millions of dollars each year. And within just a few years, he had blown through the entire $380 million loan and another $120 million of his own money. That's why at the time of his death in 2009, Michael Jackson was $500 million in debt. But despite his financial troubles, Michael's most valuable asset at the time of his death was his music catalog. He owned the copyright to many of his own songs, which were worth an estimated $100 million. But the real crown jewel of his net worth was his portfolio of other artists' songs, especially those from the Beatles. In fact, Michael's first foray into owning musical rights began in the early 1980s when he purchased the catalogs of Sly and the Family Stone. He then went on to buy a series of classic singles like Great Balls of Fire, Shake, Rattle and Roll, When a Man Loves a Woman, and Run Around Sue, to name just a few. But the biggest win came in November of 1984, when Michael purchased the Beatles catalog ATV Music for $47.5 million. The Beatles catalog was eventually merged with Sony to create a 50-50 joint venture called Sony ATV, which today is estimated to be worth a staggering $2 to $4 billion. Now, let's talk about how Michael Jackson ended up owning the Beatles songs in the first place. Back in 1984, the catalog was owned by Robert Holmes, an Australian business magnate who was putting it up for sale in the form of ATV Music Publishing. This company owned the rights to about 4,000 songs, including a division called Northern Songs, which was the music publishing arm of the Beatles. Interestingly, Paul McCartney and John Lennon had signed a pretty terrible contract at the beginning of their careers that gave the publishing rights to more than 250 songs to Northern Songs. In 1984, Paul McCartney and Yoko Ono were given the opportunity to buy back the Beatles catalog, but they passed because the $40 million price tag was too high. And that's when Michael Jackson swooped in and made the purchase, much to the surprise and disappointment of Paul McCartney. Did you know that he went on a massive shopping spree for music publishing rights in the early 80s? That's right, at the age of just 25, fresh off the incredible success of Thriller, Michael invested millions between 1982 and 1984 buying up publishing rights from artists like Sly and the Family Stone, as well as hit songs like Great Balls of Fire, When a Man Loves a Woman, and Run Around Sue. But then, in 1984, Michael's longtime attorney John Branca heard that the ATV catalog, / the Beatles catalog, was up for sale, and he approached Michael about buying it. And Michael, being the music mogul that he was, told him to spare no expense. With the highest offer at $40 million, Michael successfully won the auction with an offer of $47.5 million, which, by the way, is equivalent to $115 million in today's dollars. Now, with ownership of the Beatles songs, Michael was free to license any of their music. And in 1987, he did just that, licensing Revolution to Nike for a cool $500,000. In that deal, Michael received $250,000, while Paul McCartney and John Lennon each received $125,000 because they still owned the songwriter's royalties. But the story doesn't end there, folks. In 1995, Sony approached Michael with an incredible offer. They offered to pay him $95 million, which is equivalent to $230 million today, to merge ATV Music with their own catalog and create a new 50-50 owned publishing powerhouse. Michael agreed, instantly earning back twice his initial investment, while also gaining 50% ownership of a much bigger music publishing company. And on top of that, Michael still controlled 100% of his own songs through a separate company called MyJack Music. Surprisingly, at the time of his death in 2009, though, Michael was essentially $500 million in debt. Despite earning about $500 million from his own music, concerts, videos, and endorsements during his lifetime, Michael spent all of his money on a lavish and complicated lifestyle. He spent between $30 and $50 million per year just on his lifestyle, and he racked up massive unpaid bills with his lawyers, agents, and publicists. Let's take a closer look at some of his expenses. He spent $17 million to purchase the Neverland Ranch, plus $5 million in annual maintenance costs. He also spent $20 million to settle a child molestation lawsuit, $65 million on a variety of video projects, including the 35-minute film Ghosts that he co-wrote with Stephen King, and $12 million on a divorce settlement with girlfriend Debbie Rowe. On top of all of that, Michael spent tens of millions on Bentleys, antiques, art, clothes, chimpanzees, diamond-encrusted gloves, and other trinkets. And in order to fund his ongoing lavish lifestyle, he took out a $380 million loan against the value of his music catalog. After Michael passed away, his collection was put up for auction, and the public got to see the full roster. He owned everything from gloves worn by Johnny Depp's character in Edward Scissorhands to replicas of his own face in different expressions. He even had a robotic replica of his head, as seen in the Moonwalker film starring Jackson. Michael also collected life-size figures of fictional crime fighters like Batman, Superman, and Spider-Man, as well as sci-fi characters like E.T. and Yoda. And if that wasn't enough, his Neverland Ranch featured a fully functioning arcade with loads of games available for playing. But that's not all. According to NBC, Michael even paid $1.5 million for the Academy Award statue that was awarded to the 1939's Best Picture winner Gone with the Wind. He displayed the statue on a rotating stand next to the fireplace in the home's main living room. But unfortunately, Michael was notoriously naive when it came to his finances, and he had an overinflated sense of his own net worth. Towards the end of his life, he entered a tailspin of financial transactions with banks, hedge funds, and other shady characters in an attempt to maintain his lifestyle while staging a professional and financial comeback. And that's where things get really interesting. Before his death, Michael had spent through the entire $380 million loan and had little hope of making the interest payments, let alone paying back the principal. This debt is actually the main reason he was forced to stage the comeback tour This Is It, which arguably was the cause of his death. But despite his financial troubles, Michael's music empire continued to thrive. The new Jackson-Sony company, known as Sony ATV Music Publishing, grew over the next decade to 200,000 songs. And between 2005 and 2013, Sony ATV grew to control 2 million songs, including the catalogs and songs of artists like Lady Gaga, Bob Dylan, Beck, and Eminem. In 2012 alone, the company earned a whopping $1.25 billion from licensing and royalties and had an income of $500 million. Today, the company is estimated to be worth somewhere between $2 and $4 billion. Michael Jackson remains an icon of music and pop culture, with a legacy that continues to inspire and entertain people around the world. From the ownership of the Beatles songs to his massive estate at Neverland Ranch, Jackson's impact on the music industry and popular culture is undeniable. And even though he's no longer with us, his music and his memory continue to live on. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more videos like this, be sure to subscribe to our channel Luxury Buzz and hit the notification bell so that you never miss a thing.